Good day, everybody. Welcome back to another
Recording in
strategic
progress.
alignment event with Rabbi Karmi Ingber and the group over at Nativ in their Zoom room. They have plenty of people there in the Zoom room, and Rabbi Ingber has a wonderful message for us on the month of Adar and redemption. I think it's going to be exciting, and always is. He always has something wonderful to share with us. So let's just jump right in and see how Rabbi Ingber's doing today, and let's go from there. Rabbi, you are live on the air.
Okay, hi everyone, welcome. Hope everyone's doing well. So, all right, so I want to talk about the time of Adar. This, in the Jewish calendar, there we have 12 months, and they have different names. The month is called Adar. It's a month we're in now. I want to talk about it because it's very relevant to us. And sometimes if you tune in, you can feel the time. And there's certain things happening that happened in the month of Adar. And I want to try to explain this month and what it is about. Now, let me explain on months in general and about numbers, because all numbers have certain significance to them. Like, there's 7 days of the week. Now, why there's 7 days of the week? How does that work? So if you look at any three-dimensional object, you'll see that it has 6 sides to it, okay? That 6 sides in the three-dimensional object is the expansion of this reality called 6 sides, 6 days of the week. The goal, the thing you're going for, the thing itself is the 7th, it's Shabbat. It's the Sabbath.
Wow.
So things are built like that there is an idea of something and it expands 6 sides. 7th is the completions, to hold the seven colors of the rainbow, seven days of the week. That's why the idea of, Jews have a law of circumcision for the 8th day. 8th day means the supernatural. If you see the laws of offerings in the temple, they're always on the 8th day. You couldn't bring the animal before the 8th day. 8 represents the idea of supernatural, past the nature, which is 7. Now, if you look also at, let's say a three-dimensional object, you're going to see something else very fascinating about it. If you count the edges of the object, you'll see there's 12 edges. Now, what that means is 12 is the full expansion of something. And that's why there are 12 months in the year. That's also why there are 12 tribes. Because the tribes, you had, the forefathers and the foremothers, and then the expansion of that was the 12 tribes. Okay, that makes sense. 12 being the expansion number, and in three-dimensional object, it has 12 edges, which is the full expansion. So if there's 12 months and there's 12 tribes, it would make sense every month is lined up against a different tribe. So what I want to discuss today is, I want to talk about the month of Adar. Which tribe is it lined up with? And then the month that it's adjacent to, which is the month of Nisan, the month of Passover, that's in which tribe is that? And I want to try to explain this, so that's very relevant to our lives. Okay, so let me explain one more thing. Again, I don't know what everyone knows here, but in the secular calendar, the reason why August is 31 days and the reason why July is 31 days is because Julius Caesar had July after him, Augustus had August in the after him. They all went to 31 days, and then poor February is 28. But the secular calendar is based on the solar system, which has 365 days and a part of another day. So they have to have February sometimes has 29, so there's 28 days. In the Jewish calendar, it goes by the moon. And the moon is 11 days behind the solar calendar. So there's a certain cycle that we add another month. The month of Adar, once in a while, has 2 Adars, 2 months of this Adar, which is happening this year. This year, there's a double month of Adar. The question is, which tribe would it be that has a double month? So if you again, I don't know here what everyone knows, but if you look in the story in the Torah, there was one tribe that sort of became a double tribe. In the story of the Torah, they were given, this one tribe was given a double portion. Who was that? That was Joseph. And therefore, the month of Adar is the month of Joseph. Okay? Now, I want to explain this because the month of Adar is Joseph, and then the next month we're going to lead into the month of Passover is always called Yehuda. And that's fascinating because these are two main leaders. And I talked about it in a class a few weeks ago, which I talked about the idea of, explaining Mashiach, what Mashiach means, and it's from Yehuda. But I want to talk about this today and add a piece to it because Joseph and Yehuda were both leaders. And their months are juxtaposed. Adar, the month we're in now, which this year's a double month, is Joseph. And then we lead into Passover, the month of Great Redemption, is the month of Judah, and we'll see what that has to do with the idea of Mashiach. Okay. Now, there's also, in the month of Adar, the big thing is the holiday of Purim. And Purim, those who don't know the story is essentially that I'm sure you all know the story, but there was a evil king, Achashverosh, and his officer, Haman, who wanted to destroy the Jews. And then if you read the story in the book of Esther, there's like all these seeming weird coincidences. He kills his wife, Vashti, and then he's very upset that he makes a beauty pageant, and they're trying to hide her, but she wins the beauty pageant, and she's Jewish. She doesn't tell him he's Jewish, and the whole thing that Haman wants to kill the Jews, and then one thing leads to another, and at the end, Esther reveals she's Jewish, and when she does this, all the pieces fall into place, and the king says, "Whoa, Haman, he's the one who killed my first wife, and now he'll try to kill my second wife," and he ends up killing Haman, and the Jews who had a decree against them by Haman and Achashverosh, it's rescinded, and we're saved, and that's the holiday of Purim. Now, in this holiday happens in Adar, there's some very fascinating things. First of all, it is the only book in the books of the Bible, books of the Torah, that does not mention God's name. So why is that? God's name is not mentioned in the whole book. Sages tell us when it says the king is, if it says King Achashverosh, it means Achashverosh. If it says just a king, it's also a reference to God, but God's name does not appear. Why not? As a matter of fact, Esther's name is funny. What's the name Esther? Queen Esther. Talmud says that Queen Esther, we find her hinted at in the Torah in a verse that says, Hastir. God says, in the future, I will hide myself. And that's where you find the word Esther. Astir is a pronunciation of the word Esther. The word Hastir, so God said, I will, in the future, in the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, it says, I will hide myself in the future. And that word, Hastir, I'll certainly hide myself, is the word Esther. So Esther appears where God is hidden. Now, what does that mean? I want to explain this. Because we know Jews took on the Torah, accepted the Torah, and it became, therefore, the Torah came into the world. But it says the Jews, when they accepted it in the beginning of Mount Sinai, there was a certain hesitation, which we'll see what that is. But somehow with the joy, the love, the excitement of the whole story of Purim, they re-accepted it. What does that mean? Now, last thing I want to ask you, and then we'll try to discuss and explain it, is the word Purim means in Hebrew is the word Pur is a lot. Haman drew lots. Haman drew lots when he could kill the Jews. And every month he tried, this month, that month, trying to find which month he can kill the Jews. It landed, the month that it landed was the month of Adar, this month, and he was very happy. He was very happy. Why was he happy? Because it says that Moshe, leader of the Jews, Moshe, he died in the month of Adar. The 7th of Adar is when he died. So Haman was very happy. Yes, it's the end of the Jews. Great, I can succeed. But it says, Talmud says he didn't realize that Moshe was born the same day he died. Now that's really weird. I'll tell you why. Because the villains in the past were very smart. They knew a lot of stuff. And Haman should have known Moshe was born on the same day he died. As a matter of fact, it says all great great holy people died on the same day they were born, right? Which makes for very uncomfortable birthday parties, right? Now, why do they die on the same day they're born? You know why they do that? Because they live a full life. Life has come to completion. The year, if they die in the middle of the year, that would mean that cycle of life, they didn't come to completion. So very great holy righteous people actually died on the same day they were born. Moshe died on the same day he was born. So, but Haman didn't know that, it seems. But I don't say him. He's a very smart, evil guy. He should have known that. Okay, now I want to explain to you all these things, the month of Adar, what it's about, why it's Joseph, what does it mean, the hiddenness of it, God's name doesn't appear. We're going to try to understand this and make this relevant in our lives. Now, I want to share with you, I actually was once live in Nativ when I was visiting Texas, and I spoke about something similar. So for those of you who are there, I apologize. I'm going to introduce something that I said then, but we're going to make it a little deeper. We're going to go further. To understand the story of Adar and Purim, we got to ask a very basic question that anyone who reads the Torah will ask. People are going to say, wait a minute. In the story in the Torah, there are all these miracles that are happening, right? Splitting of the Red Sea. There are all these miracles. We don't see these miracles now. How come? If these miracles happened then, why don't we see them today? Why are they not commonplace today? It's a very good question. Why not? So I want to explain. But first, I need to explain to you the difference between a miracle and nature, because we have a wrong concept of it. I'll give you an analogy that the great Rav Dessler says. He says the following. He says like this. Everyone would agree the splitting of the Red Sea, right? The story that happened, the Egyptians are chasing the Jews. They get to the Red Sea and the sea splits and the Jews cross and the Egyptians walk in and they get drowned. Everyone would agree the Red Sea splitting was a tremendous miracle, right? Does anyone disagree with that? You can nod your heads. Do you ever disagree with that? No, it's an amazing miracle. As a matter of fact, it says that when the Red Sea split, all the seas in the world split, all the waters in the world. If you had a bathtub, the water would split. This was a miracle that happened that showed, everyone realized something crazy happened because all waters split. Now, I'll ask you a question. If the waters of the world would split once in every 70 years, what would you call that? Would you call that a miracle?
Nature phenomena.
Well, a phenomenon. Right, it's a phenomenon, right? That's exactly what happened. You would have a scientific explanation why it happens. There's something with the hydrogen, the oxygen molecules, and they have to split them. However you would explain it, you'd find some way to explain it, which is what science does. Science explains how, not why. That's out of the purview of science. Science does not ask itself, why should it be this way? That's out of the purview of science by definition. Science is, when I see a phenomenon, how does it happen? And they would find hopefully a reason for it. So if every 70 years the water split, the Red Sea split, you know what happened? CNN would be televising it. You have your lawn chairs, people with their binoculars. Everyone would be watching, the world would be splitting, the sea would be splitting. That's what would happen because it's a phenomenon. It's great, it's amazing. Once every 70s it happens. Now, what would happen if the waters every day at 12 p.m., midday, split? What would happen? Very simple. You would call that nature. You would be used to that. You would understand that. That would be your life. As a kid growing up, you would experience that as your daily experience, the way the world works, right? If you'd be in the pool, every time, 5 minutes to 12, the lifeguard would blow the whistle, everyone out of the pool, worries about this. What happened? It would be normal. You wouldn't bat an eye. So now, I ask you a question. What is now the difference between the miracle of the Red Sea splitting once in history and if the Red Sea split every day and world wars split every day? The only real difference is the frequency. The thing is the same. Now, this is very important. This is the problem with what nature is. Nature is the way God set the world up, that it should work on a regular basis. It's God's will how the world should work constantly. This is a very big problem. Those, and this happened, I guess this happened sort of with, the times of Galileo, wherever it was, where the certain religions were very anti-science. They couldn't there was a certain thing I have to see this way. There's no argument between science and Torah. That can't be, by definition. That's foolish. The way the world works is locked into a certain system. So yes, God created the world, and he wills that the way he set the world up with the laws of gravity, when you drop something, it falls. That is God's will, the way he set the world up, that it should work on a constant basis. That is called nature. When it is God's will that it happens once in history, you call that a miracle. Now, there's a very significant difference, though. Nature, in Hebrew, the word teva, nature, is the same as the Hebrew word litboa, to drown. Something overcomes you and you get stuck in it, you drown in it. And that is nature. Because you could look at nature and you could look at an incredible thing happening, but if it happens every day, you're unfazed. It's nature. I always tell people, it's like, people call it Mother Nature. It's the weirdest thing. Whose mother is named Nature? What do you mean Mother Nature? It's Mother Nature. It's the most bizarre thing. It's like a way to get around the idea that something beautiful and amazing is happening. No, it's just Mother Nature. Who's Mother Nature? Bizarre. But that's the way people look at it. So they get used to it. That's why the Hebrew word for nature, teva, hateva, nature, means to drown, because you could get drowned and stuck in it. But it also means a matbea, a coin. If you look closely, you see it's God's imprint on how the world works. Now, an amazing thing. That's why there's different names of God. And, foolish people don't know what that means. What that means is that God, we don't understand God in his essence at all. We understand the way God relates to us. Every name in the Torah, different name of God, is how he relates to us. The name Elohim is the same numerical value as the Hebrew word nature, hateva. And why is that? Because the name Elohim is the name of God that runs all of the forces of the world, all the laws of nature he creates. So when I see nature, I could say, oh, that's just a natural thing. It's nothing. And if I have good eyes, I could say, no. That's God running the world in a constant way, the way he wants to run the world on a normal basis. And I see godliness in the world. And think about it. You see a sunset. It's like, yeah, I saw it yesterday. What's the big deal? It always happens. But that's the wrong way to see the world. So it's the world is that this is God's will that he created, that the sun should go down. I should have an experience of a day. I should be inspired by it. I should realize the times are changing. And this is the way he set the world up. And I should be able to be excited by that and not dulled by that. Right? That's why also the name Elohim, the name of God that explains the idea of controlling all of the forces of nature, is the same letters. You flip the letters around and spells the word mi ele. Who made all of this? Because you could look at the world and say, who made this? Where's this from? Or you could say, which is not nature. That is the two dynamic of miracles and nature. Now I want to explain to you about the story of Purim. Because the story of Purim in the Torah, in the Bible, it's the last book in the Torah. It's the last book.
You're wrong.
It's called the end of the Sof HaNisim, that Esther is the last of the miracles that was allowed to be written. Now, why was that? Because Esther is leading us, it's the end of the road, it's leading us into a new time. It's leading us into a time of no longer supernatural miracles, but leading us into a time of natural miracles, called the hidden miracles of our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, it's so crucial because if we don't see the hidden miracles in our lives, we're not living a spiritual life. They're there all the time. And it depends on your mindset. If your mindset is that it's all random, which, I mean, I guess we realize this, but the philosophy that is the prevalent philosophy of our society was never the philosophy for thousands of years because no one thought it made sense. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, but Aldous Huxley was Darwin's friend. Huxley said that Darwin gave rationale to the atheist because before then the atheist was the joke, was a fool. They had a question, what's God to believe in? But nobody thought it was random. So came along a theory that said, oh, it's random, and that gave you the ability to throw it out and say, okay, I have to believe it's all random. But if and you shouldn't realize this, people who live their lives with the idea that everything is random and there is no purpose, and life is very, very meaningless. It really is, because it is. Good and bad is there's no objective morality. There's nothing. It's all random. So if we live our lives without seeing the hidden miracles of our lives, we're living a meaningless life. Esther is the end of the miracles of the Torah that are leading us into this new time, this time of hidden miracles. And so the Torah starts out with the grand miracles. It's like God's calling card. God told him, I run the world. I took you out of Egypt. Look at these miracles. Wow. Okay, you've seen this. You saw, that's why the 10 Commandments, the first commandment, I am your God, took you out of Egypt. Why didn't God say, I'm the God who created the heavens and earth? Because no one was there to see it. So it's different. If I say I took you out of Egypt, what I'm saying is you saw this. People had an experience of it. There were certain things that were clearly experienced. So those were the miracles of the Torah. But it shifts now into a time where can you go and see God in the hidden miracles? Now that's so crucial. And I want to explain to you now the amazing part of Adar. We started out by saying Adar is the month of Joseph. Why Joseph? What was amazing? Joseph was the person who was the dream interpreter, right? He had all these dreams, and he dreams of what was going to be in his future. He interprets Pharaoh's dreams. Dreams is a world of illusion. The dream interpreter of Yosef means he could see through illusions. He could see through it. And that's the month of Adar. The month of Adar is life, which sometimes is like you're seeing these things. It's like a dream. You're caught up in different things. We get stuck. The person who could see through it is the quality of Yosef. That's why Yosef is Adar. The power of the month of Adar. Adar is the last month of the year. In the Jewish calendar, it's the last month of the year. So what happens is the year starts out, you have clarity, and when time goes on for a while, you get into habits, right? Person's married, you're married, I'm married 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. How do you keep it alive? That's why people have figured out the idea of date night. You have to have a date night. You have to do something to keep things alive in your world, because when you get into habits, you get stuck. The Hebrew word for habit is called hergel. Hergel is the same as the words regel, your legs. Because, if you had to think every time if you had to think every time you walk, how terrible that would be? Walking is that any thought, right? When a baby learns to walk, he's got to take every step. It's very painful. And God forbid someone who has a stroke, when they have to learn how to walk again, you can't live like that. It's very, very difficult. The quality of there's certain things in life that yes, we want to be able to do them easily and not to give them much thought, like the walking process. But when our lives become like that, we become stuck in this illusion of nature, of dream. Joseph is the one who sees through it. He is the interpreter of the dreams. He sees through it. Okay, now we can understand everything I started out this discussion with. Okay. The reason why God's name doesn't appear in the Megillah is exactly that, because it is the part where God is hidden, and can we find him? That's why he's concealed. That's why Esther, her name is hiddenness, right? The word Megillah Esther means the revealing of hiddenness. She is concealed. She's in a world where God is concealed, and she is now seeing that through the hidden miracles. But that's also why I said to you earlier, when the Jews got the Torah in the beginning, it says there was a problem because they were forced to do it. Why are they forced to do it? You know, if you imagine God coming to us and you're hearing thunder and lightning and he's accepting the Torah, this is true, you can't say no. How can you say no when something's obvious to you? Right? Could anyone walk on a ledge and delude themselves that, I could just stroll off the ledge? No, because you see you're in the 50th floor. So when something's obvious, you can't say no. You can't put your hand in fire. The Jews, when they got the Torah in the beginning, it was obvious. The supernatural world made it you had to say yes. You couldn't say no. Purim is a time of distance. When God's hidden, then a person can get perspective and say, wait a minute, I want this. Sometimes you have a person, let's say, we have a phrase in the world. So it's a true phrase. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. There's truth to that, right? You have someone all the time, you're used to them, this and that. When you have a time of separation, you realize what you have and you can want it more. In the beginning, it was clarity. Here comes the Torah. Now time passed. It's Adar. It's the last month of the year. Things are far away. And I see in the hidden miracles, I see God's been involved in my life. When you see that, you feel love, you feel excited. You feel, I want to get close to that because that's something that is real. That is the story of Purim and of Adar. See, Haman, he saw Moses die during this month, and he thought it's the end. It's the end. But it's not true. If you're connected to something greater, then this life is not the end of everything. And that's what he got wrong. He thought, Moshe died to the end. It's just the beginning. He was also born on that day. That means in our lives, if we connect and realize that there's truth in the world, we see through the illusions, and we see God involved in our lives, then we realize that it's not temporary, that there is an eternity, that there's beyond this. But if this is all you see right now, this random world where nothing meaningless, then it's all meaningless. And Haman's, Moshe died, great, it's over. It's not over. That is something so deep that I really want us to understand it, because it's the point of leading a spiritual life and seeing this purpose beyond the illusion. It's easy to see when it's clear. When it's revealed miracles, it's easy to see. But when it's hidden, can you scratch the surface and see, hey, why did I meet this person? How did you all get here? How did you all get here? If you think about it in your lives, just not saying, wait a minute, I met someone, I met this person, this and that, and now I came to a Torah class. How did that happen? And when you realize that, you say, wow, there is something guiding this whole world. It's a fascinating thing, but when people get lost in the world of this illusion, what they call nature, whatever illusion they get lost in, the people who are awake, people here on this Zoom call and here in this class who want to be awake, they realize I don't want to get stuck in that. It's a fascinating thing. in the time of the Romans, when the Romans were first a major power, at the beginning of the Roman Empire, there was a tremendous amount of people that converted to Judaism. You know why? Because they saw this empty, meaningless life, and they were able to contrast it against something meaningful. There's a lot of Noachites coming into the world today, people who are looking and saying, wait a minute, I don't want to get stuck in this illusion of stuff that's meaningless. And when people realize that, they can pull themselves out of the doldrums of nature and wake ourselves up. That's the month of Adar. It's the end of the year, but when you see and you realize, you pull out of it. That's why it leads into the next month, which is the month of Nisan, which means it leads into the month of Judah. It leads into the idea we started at 3 weeks ago, the idea of Mashiach. There is a quality that when you work hard like Yosef, seeing through the lies, seeing through the illusion, then you can come to the next month of ultimate redemption. You have a certain level of clarity and redemption when you realize it's a lie and you push yourself to see through it. And then afterwards, we merit to be able to see the world in the truth of what it is. That's the month of redemption, of the ultimate redemption, the month of Nisan, which is the Passover, which is the month of Judah, who is the line of the Mashiach and bringing ultimate redemption. But first, it requires a lot of work. And the work is in the battle of nature, the battle of illusion. Let's not get caught and stuck in that. Let's see past it and see God in our lives, and then we'll be able to really live a spiritual and meaningful life. Okay, that is the thoughts, and we're going to open it up to questions, ideas, and comments. Feel free. Anything you got. If it's not on this, it could be on other stuff. Yeah, well, and Ken, I guess it was a mouthful, I guess. Good. I'm glad. There's so many deep things we can go and explain and go through. The levels of where this goes to is endless. We just touched the tip of the iceberg, but the lesson for us is really important. And we got to train ourselves, especially, we're inundated with a philosophy that's so counter to what's true. I don't know. I don't know how people do it. I don't know how people live in a life where they believe things are random and they could function. I don't know how you get up.
Rabbi, I do have a couple of questions.
Please.
First of all, why was Adar chosen to be the leap year month and not another month?
So, as I said to you before, Adar is lined up with Yosef, and Yosef has a double quality. That's who Yosef was. Yosef was the quality of like this. When Yosef's greatness became because he said no to the seduction of Potiphar's wife, and then he became the one who supported the whole world. And that's a story there. His greatness is he says, no, I'm not going to do things I can't do. I'm not going to cross lines, commit adultery, to steal something that belongs to someone else. I'm not going to cross these lines of things I can't cross. And then he's able to give. And that's a double quality. That's a quality of a person who, and that's what we have to do in our lives. You can't only be a no person, I'm not going to do the wrong thing. And you can't only be a person of, I'm doing everything. You have to, the only way you could say yes is if you know how to say no first. You have to have say, no, this is not for me, then this can be for me. This is not my spouse. This is my spouse. This is my property. This is not my property. This is my property. There's no way you could separate. You have to be able to have the quality of the knowing. Yes, that was Yosef's greatness. That's who he was. That's where he appears. What his job is. His job is to bring it all together. Say no here, yes here. And that's really the leading in from the month of Adar to the ultimate redemption is that double quality of Yosef, and it's the last month of the year, so it leads in to the ultimate time of being able to have a full redemption when you have both of those qualities of refraining from what's not yours or is not appropriate to us, and there afterwards expressing what is appropriate to us.
And could I ask a follow-up question on that?
Yeah.
The month is tied to Joseph. Purim is in the month of Adar, and in Purim, Hashem is hidden. Could we tie that to Joseph being hidden from his brothers in Egypt? And I've read commentary that said he gave them clues all the time as to who he was, but they just couldn't see it or wouldn't see it. So is there some kind of connection there between he being hidden from them in Egypt?
Yeah. There is some connection to that. That's Joseph, who again, as I said before, the person who is the dream interpreter is the person who it cannot be like when something's a dream, it's not clear. And that's the hiddenness. That's the hiddenness that I have to, when things are all revealed, it's obvious. When I live in a world that things are not clear, people will miss the person who's great. They didn't appreciate who Yosef was. They missed it. They missed Joseph when he was hidden. They missed Joseph even when back in the earlier times, they didn't realize how great he was. So that's a person who's able to, inside of a world where a lot of things are going on and people are lost in illusions, they maintain their greatness and they maintain what they have to do, and not everyone has to see. That's sticking through. Very good. Good point.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions, ideas? We can go to something else. Doesn't have to be Adar. Feel free if you have anything else you want to ask me about.
I have a
Things going on.
Please.
People are.
Sorry, I
lost
don't know if
in
someone else was asking too.
illusion.
So when you were talking about how the separation is necessary to have that yearning to come closer to Hashem, what do you think accounts for situations where, you see a person that goes through so much and they're, they're suffering a lot and they're having a really hard time, and then actually their experience kind of just, in a certain sense, like prevents them, at least from their perspective, it prevents them from kind of connecting with Hashem. Like, what accounts for the difference? Because you see people who go through something really traumatic and really crazy, and then they're like, wow. I was just talking with a physical therapist yesterday, and she works with people that have spinal cord injuries, and she was saying, it's like 50-50. She's like, half the people, it's like they can never walk again, and they're like, wow, I appreciate life so much. And then the other half, they're like so depressed they can never pull themselves out of it. So like, I guess from like a Torah perspective, like what do you think accounts for that difference? Like,
Well, I'll tell you like this. It's a good question. I mean, first of all, there's no guarantee of distance that it's going to make it better, because you're right. On one hand, distance is distance, and we could easily fall into problems. So I think that, on one level, everyone has free will to choose and to see how they experience the world. There's something that I can't exactly explain to you, but it's I connected this when I said before that there were first revealed miracles. And what that means is that, let's say, for example, you experience love with somebody, and now you're separated from them, that wakes up the feeling that you had because you experienced it.
Right.
And that's why there's two things happening here. One thing is very often the people who distance wakes them up, you'll find that they had something very powerful about them hidden from before. It just was concealed. Like they had an experience, they felt something, they knew something, they had some wholeness in them. It's very hard if there's no wholeness to ever experience. But if there's been a wholeness and then there's a breakaway, then you want to go back to the wholeness. So, like I said, the idea of the distance is only true when you kind of felt love to someone and now you're distant from them. Now you wake up that love, so you can feel it. So that's really the factor. But you have to realize something. This is a very, very deep thing. Everyone has that, and that's has to do with our souls before we come into this world. Everyone has in them a place where they could connect to, and that's the free will. Do I want to connect to a time where I believe in something good, I believe in something whole, and now I'm lacking that? But sometimes people, they don't connect back to it, and sometimes the feeling of something good inside of them is so hidden over that they are unable to realize that there is something good in the world and to therefore search it out. But sometimes we have it inside of us. Like I say, everyone on this call is here because they realize that, if somebody believed really deep down that that there's no purpose in anything, they wouldn't be in this call. And as a matter of fact, if that was true, Disney wouldn't make any money, because every one of their movies that are like, the blockbuster is always the place when someone feels in the end good won. Star Wars. What was Star Wars? There was a battle of good and evil. There's a place in people where they realize that there's something greater, but they're jaded. So if they get so jaded they can't go back and search for it, then they get stuck. That's why I say it's dependent on free will, because in the free will place, we have an ability to know there's good, to know there's right. That's built into who we are at a deeper spiritual level, and therefore we can search it out. It's like I give one other piece. It's a similar idea, but and this is very true today in our world of very confused values in the secular world. It's so confused they don't know up from down, right from left. Everyone's baffled. So there's an idea. Well, wait a minute. If a guy never learned right from wrong, it's not his fault. That's a good point. I never was taught right from wrong. So how do you throw him in jail? He didn't know. Thinks it's okay to steal. Thinks it's okay to murder. God forbid. So now there's some truth to it in the sense that, yeah, somebody who was taught right from wrong is starting out in a much higher level and they know. Someone who's not taught, you're right, there's a problem. But if you believe that a person has a spiritual component to them, it's called neshama, ruach, nefesh, different aspects of the soul they have in them, then there's a barometer inside of us that no matter how tainted it gets, a normal human being should never delude themselves that murder and theft is okay. And that's being human. So what happens is people numb that part of them and they lose that, but it's still there. And that's why they are accountable. Maybe less accountable than someone who knew clearly, but they have something inside them that a person should know. There's certain basic morality that they should know. Same thing with the Noahide laws, by the way. There's an amazing thing. I don't know if I ever shared this with you. When I was a young rabbinic student, so I remember I saw this commentary of this rabbi, and he said that everyone in the world, has to keep the 7 laws of Noah, has to keep the laws of morality, and they should find a Jewish person to teach it to them. So I was very bothered by this. I was a young student. I was very bothered by this. And I asked one of the older rabbinic students, I said, I don't understand this. You have Aborigines who've never seen a Jew before. How are they going to go and find it? And so he told me this story, and I didn't believe his answer at the time. He said, listen, he said, if a person really wants something, and they really want something, they search out for truth, then God will direct them in a way. They'll get there. And every human being, when they look at the world, they should ask, what is right and what is wrong? How did this world get here? There's certain basic things that every single human being on this planet should ask themselves. If a guy walks out in the morning and sees the sun rising, how did this get here? If you don't ask yourself that, we're fast asleep. So a person who asks himself certain questions and is honest to know what is the right way to live and why is the world like this, they will end up, God will lead them one thing to another, and they will end up finding the right direction to get the answer. That's what he told me. I didn't really believe it. I was 20 years old, and I didn't believe it. When my wife and I got married, we took our honeymoon, we went to the Seychelles Islands. And the people there had never met a Jew before. We were the first Jews they ever met. And literally every place we went to, we met random people who had their whole lives had been waiting to ask certain questions. Literally, we went to a bed and breakfast. The guy said to me, he said, you're Jewish? I can't believe it. He said, I have been excommunicated from this island. So he told me. I said, why? He said, because the priest says I asked too many questions. So I said to him, in Judaism, the guy who asked the most questions is considered the highest scholar. So then he ruined my honeymoon. Every 2 minutes, he kept asking me questions. Literally. That's exactly what happened. So now it happened. But I ran into the guy, and everybody I ran into was thinking about these things. That means there's a place in everyone, whether they're born Jewish, not born, but however you are, that there's a place in a person and a mind that God gave them, that we look at the world and we should be asking certain questions. We should be searching out for what's the right way to live. And if we honestly do that, we're going to get the answer. That's what it is.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure. Any other thoughts, questions, ideas? We can go on to different things also.
I really liked how you explained how the splitting of the sea, that was a miracle that they related to because they saw that, they experienced that. But you said you moved into a different era now with Esther, and the concealment happened, and so Hashem is concealed, which kind of explains a lot about what you've been just talking about, that the struggle is on. The struggle is on to find God.
That's right.
I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is, and I appreciate you saying, Ryan. It's really it has to give us the strength to be able to say, I can do this. I can do this. I can see these things, and it's really hard. By the way, this challenge every single person has. I have it. You have it. Everyone has it. You get used to stuff. And like, I used to always think it was funny. I remember I used to live in Israel, and we lived in an apartment building. And I remember thinking, I was going with my kid one time, and we're going in the elevator. And I thought to myself, this is really crazy. The kid's been seeing this since they're little. But do you realize what's happening? We're going to the wall. I'm touching the wall. It's lighting up. We're entering into a box and we're being transported. But like you grow up with this, so like it's an elevator. But there's actually a statement, an amazing statement in a book called Gesher Chaim. He says that's why human beings. Listen to this. This is amazing. Why human beings are not, other animals are born with their faculties almost fully developed from the time they're little. Right? You ever see National Geographic? You know, the horse is born, and then 10 minutes later, it's jumping around, all that stuff. The only creation that is not born with its faculties for a long time is the human being. Isn't that amazing? It's wild. Why are we the most incapable of taking care of ourselves? We develop slowly. And one of the reasons they say is that if we were born, imagine you were born and you got it, and you saw everything, you'd go crazy. You'd like, reality, my God, what's going? You would literally go bananas, because you would see a world that was so incredible, so complex. You would be like, what is this? But you get used to it, and you get numb to it. And then when you realize this is beautiful, this is amazing, this is just beyond anything, you're already numb. And you got to wake yourself up. Yeah. Good for you, Ryan. Thanks.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. We have time for a couple more. Any other questions we got? We have another few minutes. Anything could be on, we could change the topic on anything we want. A few minutes we got. Anything, anyone else want to say something?
Rabbi, I've got a question.
Please, Larry.
Yes, sir. It's an off-topic question, if you don't mind.
Or please feel free.
Yes, sir. I'm a righteous Noahide, and I had heard a rabbi say that as a righteous Noahide, that of course I am not allowed to date or marry a Jewish woman. We know this, you know, but I was also told too that a righteous Noahide is only allowed to marry or date other righteous Noahides. They're forbidden to date Christians or Buddhist or any other female that is not a Jew. So is this wrong what I'm hearing, or is that correct?
It's essentially correct. It's essentially correct. I mean, it doesn't say it's forbidden to date, but it's you can't. Marriage is becoming one with somebody. You can't become one with somebody when you're going there and they're going there. I mean, so you want to meet somebody, explain to them what it means to be a righteous Noahide. Somebody mentioned it a few weeks ago. You have to realize, like, it's not about changing religions. It's not a religion. It's doing what's right. We don't really believe in this idea of religions. There's Torah, and everyone has what is the right thing to do. And I think that, if you date somebody, you could date, but you can't marry. You have to explain to them, but you're not going to want to marry somebody, Larry, who's not on the same page as you. So if you meet someone who grew up Christian and grew up with everything, talk to them. Well, look, I don't really understand. I don't, I was born Jewish. I don't really so much, I didn't grow. I have a lot of people that from my shul that converted. So I know a lot of people that grew up in a Christian society, and I don't really understand why most Christians would not embrace what this is, the 7 laws of Noah. I don't get it, because in Christianity, what happens is that when it first started, so when Paul sold it to the pagans, so they had many gods, so they limited it. Now they have the whole calculation, 3 and 1. But deep down, most people that are thinking rational believe in one God. So believe in one God. And then you could show them, listen, I mean, there's a very basic, I know, I think Rabbi Tuvia Singer speaks sometimes here. Rabbi Tuvia Singer, went through very great detail through the, through the New Testament, all these things. So, I mean, I had asked him when I was years and years ago, I'd asked him 30 years ago, he used to teach for a program that I had in Israel. And I said to him, I teach a lot of things, and should I go into it? He said, I don't know if you really want to go deeply into it, because reading the New Testament doesn't doesn't feel so good for my soul. But there's a very basic question that you could ask someone that I don't know how anyone answers this. It's very, very basic. If you're dating someone, Larry, who's a Christian, you're talking about one God. And he asked him a very, very basic question. If somebody believes in the New Testament, and the New Testament says the Old Testament, what they call the Torah, they call that's true, and then they changed. The problem is in the Torah, it says numerous times, not one law can ever be changed one iota. Lo sigra, lo sosif. It's one of the commandments. Can never. So that is self-contradictory. It's illogical. I mean, it's very simple. It's not a hard calculation of the verse. That's the ultimate self-contradiction. You can't tell me that book is true. That book says it'll never change one iota, and then this book said that book's changed. That doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction. So, you're a rational person, and you should be able to, if someone you're going to marry, you should be able to convince them to be rational too, and explain to them the logic of it, and hopefully it'll work out.
Rabbi, this is Dan speaking. In light of that, how does that affect, say, where one of a married couple becomes a B'nai Noach? It brings its own problems and challenges, but in that light, I mean, how would that fall in that scenario? I mean,
well, so I think that everyone's got to navigate at a personal level and speak to someone to direct things and to help guide them. Because on one hand, if you're married and one person realizes what the reality
embraces Torah, sure,
yeah, and one doesn't, so it's hard to continuously preach to your spouse, because that's not going to go so well. But you have to figure out a way to communicate and try to you're married to the person and have kids. Hopefully over time you could figure out a way to get the point across. And now the question that you have to ask yourself, Dan, and this is a very good question. This is a question I have when I teach people that are Jewish, people not Jewish. I have this question across the board. Not every time do people function by logic. Okay, that's the problem. I remember when I was a young rabbi, and I had this guy I was teaching. He was a kid in college, a Jewish kid, totally secular. And then I proved to him the Torah was true. And it was a matter of we were learning together like every day for like a couple of weeks, and then I proved it to him, and he was stuck. He was no way he can get out of this. Like he was checkmate. And he just looked at me and said, Rabbi, you may be right, but I want to go to college and chase after women. That's what he said to me. I spent 2 weeks with this guy, until I got him to understand the truth. And then he was just like, which was at least something. At least he realized, and maybe he grew out of it later. Maybe he straightened out. I lost touch with him. But the problem is that people, most of the time, people don't do the right thing. It has nothing to do with their thinking ability. It has to do with their emotions. I want this. I'm afraid of this. I was told this. I grew up being told that if I question this, then you're going to hell. I had one woman that was converting by me years ago, and she told me that, I forgot how the discussion came out, but she was in a classroom or something, and in Catholic school, someone asked a question, how do we know this to be true? And the I guess it was a nun said, okay, now everyone, the devil has taken Johnny's soul. We all need to pray for him. Now, Johnny's going to have a tough time asking more questions, because he's got fear that's been inserted into him. He can't look at that. So I would say if a person's dancing in a loving relationship with someone that they're married to, you need to figure out the way to communicate to help a spouse to be able to see what's true and deal with the emotional issues that block us all from seeing what is right in many aspects of our lives.
Very
Thank you,
well
Rabbi.
said, Rabbi. Thank you.
Rabbi, the reason I asked you the question was, where I live, there's hardly any Noahides around. I
Yeah.
know maybe one in the town that I network with, but it just limits my options. The only two Noahides that I know of in my hometown is me and my brother.
Right.
So even our family we talk to them and they're hardcore Christian, and you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I just want to ask that question,
Right.
because I don't want to network on dating sites, so I just want to get your,
Well,
find out
that's why I said a little different than the other rabbi who told it to you. That's why I didn't say there's a problem dating. He may be right, there's a problem marrying, because you don't you don't want to go and look. Dan's question was if someone's already married. So, if the couple are connected and they have a loving relationship and one has been able to understand, so you got to try to bring, hopefully bring your spouse along. But nobody should go into a marriage where you're going in different directions. So the problem, Larry, is not so much the dating. You just got to make sure you don't marry someone that you can't explain this to. And so to go and to meet people that you want to marry, that you could do, but you have to then explain to her and say, listen, this is, where I'm going, and hopefully you'll be able to explain it to her. I don't think if you're gonna, if you and your brother are the only people in this group that are Noachides, you're a special person. You're a person who's able to go against the tide and say, I'm able to stand up for what's correct. So you're a special person, and you want to marry a special person too. So you meet the woman, and over time, if you get to know each other, and you don't have to bring it up in the first date, but in the second, third date, you have to talk about what these things are. And you'll get to know the person very, very quickly and very, very deeply. Because if the person is going to block and say, no, the question I told you before about the idea in Christianity about where it's a self-contradiction. I actually had a scenario like that. I don't know if I ever told you. I had a scenario like that. I was in a plane flying from Israel to America. And I was reading, I was learning my Torah books, and there was a guy next to me. He was a Christian guy. He was just been on a church mission to Israel, and he was 6'8". He was gigantic, and he was sitting next to me. And I guess he decided that he was going to convert me or something, but he kind of picked on the wrong guy. So he asked me a question. And then I answered the question. And I said, okay, I answered. I said, now can I ask you a question? I said, okay. So I asked him this question of the self-contradiction. I said, and all of a sudden, he started screaming. I was on the plane, and he's 6'8". I was getting a little bit concerned. He goes, I don't know, it doesn't make sense, but one time my foot was caught and I was saved. And he started screaming out, and I realized there was no logic. I couldn't talk to him. He just shut down. And he was talking about this experience, and there was no one to talk to. And I said, okay, you're 6'8". We're in a plane. I can't really go anyplace. This conversation is over. You should be well. But there was no one to talk to. So Larry, what's going to happen is if you go out with this woman and you talk and you get to meet her, and then afterwards you start to talk to her about truth and the way the world is, you'll see the blocks if she's able to hear you or not. And if she's able to hear you, then she'll come along. And she's not, then she's not for you.
Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure. Okay, guys. I think we're going to call it. And great to see you all. And we'll see you next week. And for some more fun and excitement.
Blessing, Rabbi.
Blessings.
Blessings, everybody. All the best. Thanks.